today. Happy, a long-time friend. And I can say long-time friend. I don't know how they do it today. Exchange friends like they're changing clothes. But in our era, Tyndall Air Force Base, 1974, 75, prior to having the 4 adult children that I have. Some of you young jitterbugs don't know anything about that. You were not even born. I'm not holding it against you if you don't try to hold it against me. But at 62, I am celebrating the fact that I am 62, would not go back to being a teenager with acne and heart problems, heartbreak, and trying to figure out life. I love this season of my life. But then I was 20, 21, when I met this wonderful woman. She and I were both busy being military wives. I think you just had Daryl at the time, and we lived down the street from each other in Weary, one of the Wearies. I think they tore it down now. We lived down the street from each other, and my husband, the days that he would leave me the car, I'd go and visit her, or she would come and visit me. Now you can't show up in people's houses like that. Then you could just show up unannounced, and would show up, and we would just talk together and then laugh together, and just as our children grew and our life grew and our ministries grew, I think they left and went to Japan and a couple of other places. And over the years, we looked up and we were trying to reminisce in the office of when is the last time we've seen each other. But what I love the most is the fact that when I walked up and hugged, it was just as if I'd seen her yesterday. There was no time and distance that broke us apart. There was that genuine connection. And I think the last time that we were together, we kind of concluded we were actually doing a television taping for Mrs. Wright, and she had a television show called Drumbeat. And she, myself, and Pastor Hutchison and someone else was being interviewed. And we couldn't figure out how many years that was ago. So if you want to Google it, do the research, and send me an email, I'm good with that. But that was, and then we went on and realized, okay, we have mutual friends, the Johnsons in Fort Walton. They were celebrating their 50th, was it their 50th wedding anniversary? And I just saw her across the room. She saw me across the room. We kind of waved. She didn't realize that I had had surgery. I didn't know what was going on with Pastor James Kelly. And that was good enough. Right. But I was elated that when I had Destiny to call and see would she come on, and she accepted, and I think I had her to order a copy of your book and looked at your book, and I was so blessed to look at those red stilettos that I would have never been able to wear, still can't wear. I can't blame it on age. I couldn't wear those. I was too awkward as 20 years old and 21, so I wouldn't break my ankle. But I love I know the book is an eye catcher. This is Pastor Margie Kelly. Why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself and about the book and so forth?
Okay. Well, I'm Pastor Margie Kelly, and my husband now is Bishop Kelly of Free Spirit Community Church. We just recently ordained our son as senior pastor. And I wrote the book Limping in High Heel Shoes because I wanted to just give a jump start to women who are suffering from wounded spirits, wounded souls, and maybe they don't know what's happening to them. And I was hoping that the book could just reveal some things to them so they can understand that, listen, I may have a limp, a wound that needs to be healed. So it was just to reveal some things to them and hopefully give them a good jump start on how to find wholeness from that book. Mm-hmm.
Amen. I totally relate to that. I enjoyed it. I read it from cover to cover.
Oh, okay.
I enjoyed that because it took me down memory lane. Our second book that we did through Destiny Image, Will Thou Be Made Whole. I focused on emotional healing and the importance of healing from inside out because I'd shot myself in the leg as a teenager. And I remember the doctor pulling the scab off every time I went to his office. And I'm thinking, what kind of quack is this? And he would take a Q-tip swab and run it through, because the bullet went through and through, in one hole and out the other, and missed my bone by a hair. He would always take a Q-tip and run it through there, and without any sedation. And he would say to me, you have to heal from the inside out. I didn't know years later I would write about that. And the importance of, you may look good on the outside, but on the inside you're filled with infection. Things that you haven't dealt with that can literally poison your bloodstream, could shut down all of your vital organs. So it's important to address issues, address things that wounded you, address things that cause you to be broken so that you don't end up deformed. If you break a bone and you don't put a cast on it, it could heal, but heal incorrectly and ruin your walk, cause you to limp. So I was elated as I read that. I thought, this will catch a lot of, you're reaching a different audience that I wouldn't necessarily reach. You'll reach that diva, glamour shot audience. When they see those stilettos, immediately they'll buy the book thinking fashion show, and literally you'll dress them from the inside out.
You can be healed from the inside out. Let us aid you on your journey to wholeness with these products. For your donation of any amount, you can receive today's teaching. For your donation of $25 or more, you will receive today's teaching and Limping in High Heels by Dr. Margie Kelly. For your donation of $50 or more, we will send you Dr. Kelly's book and the Journey On series by Dr-Vernette-Rosier. For your donation of $100 or more, we will send you Limping in High Heels by Dr. Margie Kelly, Healing the Whole Person by Dr. Vernette-Rosier, and the Journey On series on CD and DVD. To place your order, visit our website, byrosierministries.org, or you can contact us via phone at 810-DREAM-08. Thank you for supporting Let the Prophet Speak and helping us reach the nations.
But one of the main reasons that I wanted to have you on today, not just to connect women in ministry, because we're women in ministry, but we're friends in ministry, both pastoring here locally, but not allowing ministry or travel or years to tear at the fiber of what every woman needs, a sister. Someone that they could connect with, relate to, and if 10 years pass, they could step right in or pick up the phone and call them, and they know I'm available, I'm here. I'm finishing I lost count now, which book, that I'm finishing another book, and this October, we will debut the book on our women's conference cruise. We're cruising out of Mobile to Mexico, 4-day cruise. So I'm working on interviewing various pastors. I've interviewed pastors in Germany, Dallas, Bahamas, from various parts of the world, male and female, on the subject of grief. Now, it's a funny story that goes with that. While I was grieving over my brother being diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer 5 years ago, a prophet from Jacksonville called me and said, the Lord spoke to me to leave church, to go out of the church and call you and tell you he wants you to write about grief. She didn't know anything about my brother, and immediately I thought, the last thing on the earth I want to write about is grief. I want to get away from grief, and I want grief to get away from me, because I buried so many people in my family. Every 2 years, from the time I was 4, burying my baby brother, 6, burying someone else, 8, burying a friend, 10, burying my mother, 12, burying my grandfather, and just on down the line until it's just my 2 sisters and myself here. But obeying the word of the Lord, I started working on Journey On, a journey through grief, and researching the therapeutic things, what should be done that will help us therapeutically, not just looking at the spiritual side, because I didn't want to be religious. The worst thing you can do when a person has lost someone is preach to them. And for me, you can't preach to the preacher because I just hit a mute button. Like, you can't out-scripture me. I'm trained, educated, seminary trained, so I'm thinking to myself, give me something that's real, that's relevant. I've suffered a loss, and you can't go into some of the old wise tales or adages that people use, sayings, God needed a rose, so he picked your rose out of the rose garden, as if God couldn't make roses. And I'm thinking, how stupid. Those kind of things. So I have little tolerance for stupidity, or it will get better. Yeah, when? When we're in heaven. But practical things that you could do to walk through it, and understanding that everybody grieves. And it's more than just the loss of life, but you can lose a job and it's worthy of the grief, especially if your whole family depended on it. Loss of opportunity that you can never get it back. Loss of a pet. My children were my pets, so I couldn't afford a pet. But there are people that actually had animals, mammals as pets, and they actually grieved the loss of those individuals. So there are things that involve grief. I want to give the definition of grief, and then we'll get more into disrobing, revealing our pain, our life, the kind of things that we've gone through, because each one of us has had someone to die. Two things we can't miss on. We're born and everybody dies. So why do we avoid the conversation? But if you want to clear the room, start talking about death. Or you have individuals talk about how morbid that is when it's life. And I think it's how you view it is how you do it. So we have to learn how to look at it differently and equip people.
Amen.
Grief is an intense emotional suffering caused by loss, death, disaster, hurricane victims, Hurricane Katrina, people that were displaced. They lost home, lost all their memorabilia. They lost all of their great memories. They can never return to that. People grieve the loss of that, and most individuals never think about that's a level of grief that they're having to face and walk through. Misfortune. When the stock market crashed, there were some people that lost everything they had in the stock market, and they had retired. They couldn't get it back. And some of them had heart attacks and died behind. Some of them jumped out of windows, blew their brains out because they were grieving. Acute sorrow, deep sadness or hardship, suffering or pain. Grief is painful. You can feel like you're okay for a solid year, and one day you wake up and you're having crying spells. That's grief. You have to do the grief work. It could be 5 years later, and there's a trigger. I had a trigger driving home, thought I was doing okay. My brother passed in February, buried him, and then in March, with a boot on my foot, I broke my foot in January. I'm flying to Germany and thinking I'm recovering from this. And in June, we drove to Jacksonville to pick up some pastors that flew in from Germany. Heading back home, I made a turn off of 10 onto Monroe, and it wasn't until my husband said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to see my brother." And all of a sudden I realized my brother had passed. I knew it, but the trigger was my subconscious remembered that's my exit. 27 all my life. That time of night I would think about my brother and think, he'll be up, let me go and chat with him. By the time I said to my husband, "I'm going to see my brother," and he looked at me like she had snapped. There was water flooding my face. I was having a panic attack, and I'm gripping the steering wheel, and he's saying, "Let me drive." And I'm thinking, I can't pull over. I need to floor this thing and get to 5504 Westview Lane, Tallahassee, Florida, get out of this car from behind this wheel. Rushed to the Westview house and climbed in the bed, and remembered I was in that bed when I received the phone call that my brother had passed. Those were triggers that re-triggered, that fired at the grief or caused the grief to fire off again. So once again, I'm swallowed up with this grief and having to just ride it out and understand you can either bottle it up and have a complete nervous breakdown, or you can do the grief work. And it is work. If you're doing it right, you feel like I am tired, I am exhausted. And you could pull out a picture and it happens again. Tell us about your journey. I gave you a little bit of my journey, which was the prerequisite or predicated me shifting gears and actually finishing the book that the Lord had spoke to me 5 years prior to that. I was determined that I was going to do it right when it came to losing my brother, because the therapist concluded that I had not grieved. And I thought that was impossible. burying that many people. But I discovered when my face was flooded with tears and I'm standing, we had just left Martha's Vineyard, standing in the Boston airport, I thought I walked under an open ceiling and it was raining on me, and realized I was the person crying. I left there and when it flew home after 7 days of resting, went to a therapist. She took my family history and said, "You've never grieved the loss of all these people. You kept going." She nailed it. I busied myself with life. I helped everybody else. And she said, the thing that you have going for you and against you, you're a pastor. So you're always helping someone else. Who helped you? Who helped you? How did you adapt? Give us a checkup. Where are you now? But when you first received the news, how did you cope? And how are you coping?
One of the persons that helped me, believe it or not, I was in a conference in Atlanta, Georgia, and there was a session for women pastors. And I went to this session and just to hear what was going to be said about women pastors. And the speaker there, Pastor Colette Gumby, she was ministering on women pastors, but she began to talk about her position, how she came into that position, and when she had lost her husband. And she talked about how she grieved so heavily before he had passed. Wow. Yeah. She didn't know what all was going on. And she said after he had passed, she had to step into a role where she had to be at least strong enough to carry that on. Well, when Raymond became ill with diabetes when we were in Japan, he was probably around 12 or 13 years old. And when he became very, very ill, he was at Florida State. He was just graduating and getting ready to go into law school. And we had found out that he just was not, he had really kind of given up. He was tired of fighting. He had sent word to me, "Mom, I'm tired. I'm asking the Lord to take me home." And
He had sent word to you that he was tired,
word that he was tired.
He was asking the Lord to
take him home. And he didn't want to tell me because I kept insisting, "You stay on the word." We prayed all the time. I had him just confessing God's word. And I knew he was tired, but I was trying to just keep him going. But what happened, the process, I grieved so heavily. This was before I got the news that he said he wanted to go on home. Okay. I grieved so heavily,
now,
I didn't know what was going on.
Did he say this as a student, or he said it because he was in and out of the hospital a lot? What was transpiring?
What was transpiring? It was so many years. He had told me, he said it was so many years that he had dealt with it. And he began to have problems with his eyesight and different things that was just happening to his body because he was type 1. That's a very rough one to have, type 1, as a child. And he was just tired of needles. He was tired of insulin. And he just got tired. And he says, "I'm just kind of ready to go." But I grieved so heavily before he actually passed, until when he actually passed, there was still a grieving process, but it was so different. Sure. And I realized it was ordained for me to go to Pastor Gumby's class to hear that. I kept that in my mind. I remember nothing else she said in that class other than that story. And that was probably 5 years later when that came to my mind. So I knew what was happening and I was able to cope. So, yeah.
You can be healed from the inside out. Let us aid you on your journey to wholeness with these products. For your donation of any amount, you can receive today's teaching. For your donation of $25 or more, you will receive today's teaching and Limping in High Heels by Dr. Margie Kelly. For your donation of $50 or more, we will send you Dr. Kelly's book and the Journey On series by Dr-Vernette-Rosier. For your donation of $100 or more, we will send you Limping in High Heels by Dr. Margie Kelly, Healing the Whole Person by Dr. Vernette-Rosier, and the Journey On series on CD and DVD. To place your order, visit our website, vyrosierministries.org, or you can contact us via phone at 810-DREAM-08. Thank you for supporting Let the Prophet Speak and helping us reach the nations.
I can relate to that, and we can go back to the story, but I was sitting at North Carolina, Raleigh-Durham, the convention center there, and I was a vendor for my last book, God of My Dreams. And I can remember Jasmine Skerlock took her text, Genesis, the 35th chapter, and she said, when she reached the part, and Jacob buried Rachel, and Jacob journeyed on, I went into a trance. I knew it was God ordained for me to be there, to sit in that service, because when I went into a trance, I started writing my brother's eulogy. And this was September 2016. August 2016. He didn't pass until February 2017. But I knew he was transitioning, that he was going to leave, and God was preparing me through the word. I reached the part when she said, and Jacob journeyed on. I heard, and Vern buried man, and Vern journeyed on. We always called him man. And I knew that God had ordained that to prepare me so it wouldn't catch me off guard. So I would start the process then so that it wouldn't be so overwhelming for me.
Exactly. And overwhelming is the key. I came to realize that it is natural to grieve, as you're talking about. Even moments later, many years, we have that moment of grief. But I had to realize about the spirit of grief. And the spirit of grief comes in to actually debilitate you, and it's a spirit that wants to take you out, wants to take your life. So we have to be careful, even in grieving, that a spirit of grief does not come to overwhelm us. Because a lot of times you'll see this in couples that marry, they've been together 50, 60 years, and one spouse has gone on, and the other one is so broken, they become ill, they give up, they don't want to eat, and shortly after, they leave too. And a spirit of grief came. But God wants you to keep living. He wants you to keep living, yes.
And a lot of people do not realize that, that people that's been married many years, even if the person doesn't pass, if they divorce, the other person can go into such severe depression and grief and destroy their health and literally give up.
That's right.
And pass prematurely because they're not dealing with grief properly. There's a proper way to deal with grief. And then when you're grieving too hard and too long, psychiatrists and therapists recommend that you need an antidepressant. I believe in doctors, and I believe in the spiritual side. Luke was a physician. If it wasn't important, I don't believe Jesus would have included him. He had a doctor traveling with them. So I believe that if you break the mind, you need a physician. Just as if you break an arm, you put a cast on the arm. So to prevent a break or a nervous breakdown, you need to do it properly. Going through the stages, understanding that I've got to do the work. The person would want me to live on. I need to take care of myself. I need to give myself a chance to feel it, but not allow the feelings to bury me or give me a heart attack or give me a stroke. What was hidden from us was not hidden from God. So the things that we do, eating, resting, travel, and talking about. Some people are notorious, and I've learned this from all of the years of being a pastor and helping people funeralize family members. I'm amazed at how many family members will tell the person, don't talk about them. Don't show them a picture, and that will prevent a person from grieving properly. It's normal. If they've been in your life all this time, it's normal to pull out pictures. That helps with the healing process. It's normal to hold a conversation rather than act like they didn't exist at all. So what kind of therapeutic things did you do? Did you journal? Journaling is a good thing as well. Did you meet with other people once a year and have services? And people do that, memorial service to remember the person, to keep them alive. What helped you? What strengthened you?
We didn't. What we would do, special times would come around because he passed in November, during November 95, and his birthday is June 19. So around those times, those special dates, we'd get together and we'd talk, just talk about the silly things he would do and just how he was and so forth and so on. And there were times when we could just talk about him as though he was sitting right next to us. And then maybe 2 years later, the same event come around, and we couldn't say anything, and we were okay with it. Each one of us, my husband and my son, we knew when maybe one was okay, the other one was not. And so we respected that and honored that and helped to get through that. So we would just talk about him, and things he would do, and I would just try to keep his memory alive. But when he passed, it was 2 years before I could touch his room. I left everything the way it was for 2 years. So a lot of times I tell people, you have to just process your own way of grieving.
Everybody grieves
differently. That's right. And some say, go clean out everything that's there. But we didn't, and I'm glad that I did not, because that brought the healing. No one was going to really use this room anyway, and so it wasn't necessarily cleaned out that time. But just remembering on those special days, yes, the things that he did, and I just can remember. Particularly when he passed, I was always listening for that little car to drive up on Fridays, because he'd come from Tallahassee, and he comes home and tell me how his weekend went, a week went at school. And so for years, I would keep listening for that car. It's things that we do.
Those are triggers.
Those are triggers, exactly. But mainly just talking about him and remembering those days is the way we got through it. Yes.
And also, all of those things are a part of the healing process. Is a part of doing the grief work.
You can be healed from the inside out. Let us aid you on your journey to wholeness with these products. For your donation of any amount, you can receive today's teaching. For your donation of $25 or more, you will receive today's teaching and Limping in High Heels by Dr. Margie Kelly. For your donation of $50 or more, we will send you Dr. Kelly's book and the Journey On series by Dr-Vernette-Rosier. For your donation of $100 or more, we will send you Limping in High Heels by Dr. Margie Kelly, Healing the Whole Person by Dr. Vernette-Rosier, and the Journey On series on CD and DVD. To place your order, visit our website, vyrosierministries.org, or you can contact us via phone at 810-DREAM-08. Thank you for supporting Let the Prophet Speak and helping us reach the nations.